Hello and welcome. What kind of Afghanistan does the Taliban really want, and how sustainable is it? President Hamid Karzai has talked openly about including members of the Taliban in his government. Well, so far, the US, which has about 94,000 troops on the ground there, has objected to the idea. American officials say they want more time for their clear, hold and build strategy to take root and weaken the Taliban's overall influence before there is any talk of including them in the governance of the country. But major delays in the planned US campaign to oust Taliban forces from Kandahar and the group's resurgence in Marja after an earlier US assault has again raised concerns about America's strategy and whether or not the Taliban can really be defeated. Those who support reaching out and including the Taliban say they are part of the Afghanistan political reality and that their fight is aimed only at the foreign troops occupying the country. On today's show, we ask, what is the Taliban really looking to achieve in Afghanistan? And does the US offensive against the group have any chance for success? You can join our conversation with your questions and comments. Send an SMS or an email and we'll take your phone calls on the show. Well, joining us from Kabul is Abdul Salam Zaif, the native of Kandahar who served as the Afghan ambassador to Pakistan prior to the US invasion. As Taliban's emissary, Ambassador Zaif consulted frequently with the group's leaders, including Mullah Muhammad Omar. In 2002, Ambassador Zaif was detained in Pakistan, transported to Bagram Air Base and later sent to Guantanamo Bay, where he was held as an unlawful combatant until his release in 2005. He's the author of My Life with the Taliban, which has just been translated from Pashto. In New York, we have Jerry Van Dyke, a journalist and author who lived and covered Afghanistan through the 1970s and 80s. He reported on the Mujahideen while living with Jalaluddin Haqqani and his fighters, and that was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. In 2008, Mr. Van Dyke was captured and imprisoned in the Pakistan tribal region. His book, Captive: My Time as a Prisoner of the Taliban, describes his 45-day ordeal. Gentlemen, I welcome you to the show. And Ambassador Zaif, I want to start with you and ask, when people talk about the Taliban, is it really clear what that means anymore, considering so many different groups seem to come under this term Taliban now?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Really, the world community and also the nation in the world, they are talking about Afghanistan. And Afghanistan is the top issue in the world because there is always fighting in Afghanistan, always problem in Afghanistan. And the problem of Afghanistan became very sophisticated to the world community to resolve this problem. Yeah. And nowadays, some country, including American and Pakistan and some other alliance of American, they trying to make Taliban separate, and they wanted to make them weak and to beat them. And this is the reason always they are talking about the Taliban. There is so many groups, and they are different, and they are not aligned, or they are not under one command. I'm really not agree with that, because the Taliban, which they are doing now, and they are claim they are doing jihad. Jihad need one Amir. Amir, including to be a separate Amir, there is one Amir. Now we know the leader of the Taliban is one. His name is Mullah Muhammad Omar. He is leading the Taliban until today. There is no other Amir to be instead of Mullah Muhammad Omar, or to be beside of him. That's meaning the Taliban, they are united, and they have a united group, and they are one command, and they are one commanding. And I think this kind of conspiracy which the American, they want to divide the Taliban, this is not working in Afghanistan. Reality is that the American, if they want to resolve this problem, they have to find alternative way than war. And the war is not, I think this is not the solution for Afghanistan.
Ambassador, let me ask you one thing. The Taliban in Afghanistan was accused of having ties to Al-Qaeda and sheltering Al-Qaeda, one of the main justifications for the United States going into Afghanistan in 2001. Does the Taliban have ties with Al-Qaeda?
Al-Qaeda is, I think this is the Al-Qaeda, or Osama bin Laden means he is the leader of Al-Qaeda. They didn't invited by the Taliban to Afghanistan. They were in Afghanistan before Taliban came to Afghanistan, and they arrived in Afghanistan in Kandahar. I think the Russian invasion, when they invaded to Afghanistan, they occupied Afghanistan. That side, the American, they were encouraged the individuals and the volunteer to come to Afghanistan to fight against Russia in Afghanistan. They were supporting these people which they came to Afghanistan. I think the Osama bin Laden, including the other Al-Qaeda, they came to Afghanistan in that time. In this time, when they were supporting the Al-Qaeda in the member, and that was more than 1,000 people they were in Afghanistan. When the Russian collapsed in Afghanistan, they went from Afghanistan. I think there was other government in Afghanistan. They gave the nationality to 600 people in Afghanistan, including Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden went to Sudan. He was invited back to Afghanistan before Taliban. But this was inherited, remained to the Taliban until the September 11 and the September 11 happened in Afghanistan 2001. This problem became very sophisticated with Taliban. The Taliban, they were not defending from the crime or from the September 11, and they were defending from Islamic law and regulation, and they were defending from the culture of Afghanistan. This was not suitable for the Taliban to surrender Osama bin Laden or anyone to American, and they wanted evidence and proof against the Osama bin Laden. I think I will come to the question. There is link between Al-Qaeda and Taliban, but this link is different because the agenda of the Taliban is national, the agenda of Al-Qaeda is international. This is different problem. But today, this is the enemy is one because Ambassador, America of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, and this is some kind of thing bring them together to fight against enemy.
I understand what you're saying now. I'm sorry, we have a satellite delay, so thank you for the clarification. I'll get back to you in just a moment. Let me bring in Jerry Van Dyke here now. Jerry, you spent time in captivity with the Taliban and got to a very good look at what was going on from the inside. Plus, you know Afghanistan very well for the last 30, 40 years. Let me ask you what you learned about the Taliban and how you assess what the Taliban represents nowadays.
I felt, based upon not just the time I was in captivity in where I think was Momand Agency, but I could well have been Bajur. They said we were near Damadola, which is a small village in Bajur Agency, that based upon my time there in captivity, as well as the times that I spent with the Taliban, 4 different times in Kunar, twice in Kunar, once across the border in Chitral, and another time down in Nangarhar, that I found very little difference between what we call the Afghan Taliban and the Pakistani Taliban. I thought fundamentally they were Pashtuns, that Islam, of course, played a very, very important role in their lives, but also that Pashtun nationalism, the fact that there are enemy invaders in their country, I think it resonated very powerfully with them. They said, all of them crossed the border, the Durand line, from Afghanistan to Pakistan. And when I was in captivity, they crossed from Pakistan, they told me, into Afghanistan to fight. To them, the Durand line, the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan, was non-existent.
So Jerry, Jerry, I guess what you're saying is what it backs up what the ambassador says, which is that essentially they were looking for to defend their way of life, defend their view on how Islam should have been, spread throughout the country, and not so much. I mean, that basically it was the occupying force that rallied them together.
True, but in addition, the latter part of the time that I was in captivity, we listened for hours to what I thought were Taliban recruiting tapes. And I noticed that the cassette was made in Quetta. And they talked a lot about, or they sang these chants, were references to Pashtun history, to Pashtun geography. And I felt that this appealed to them. This was why that they were using these tapes to rally, to recruit young men to join the movement. If they were solely, as many people say, under the arm or under the power of the ISI or the Pakistani army, then I think that they also have their own agenda, and their own agenda is to appeal to Pashtun nationalism, Pashtun history, Pashtun accomplishments in the past, as well as the power of Islam as a rallying force, Jerry, not just as a matter of faith, but also as a form of nationalism.
So let me ask you, how were you treated by the Taliban when you were in captivity?
Very interesting question. They did not lay a hand on me. It was a combination of what I felt, that part of Pashtunwali, the tribal code of the Pashtuns, that Milmastia, that and Pana, to treat a guest with respect, to protect to the death a guest in your presence or in your home. At the same time, I was constantly frightened that I could be killed at any moment. At one time, as reference was made to the price of kidneys or the price of a blood vein in Peshawar or Islamabad. I felt that they would take my kidneys. Other times when we had what to now was a mock execution, men lined up behind me, sunglasses, the Kalashnikov was right against my temple. The man went into his vest to pull out what I was certain was a knife, and I thought of Nicholas Berg in Iraq. I thought of Daniel Pearl in Karachi 6 years ago, almost to the day. I was certain that I would be beheaded. I was told in no uncertain terms that I had to convert if I ever wanted to be freed. Ultimately, convert or die. And it became very, very hard for me because at the same time, not only was I frightened, I was treated with respect. The fact that I was literate, the fact that I could write, contributed enormously. Also to the way they treated me. My age, the fact that I was a Spingir, that I had a gray beard, I was older, which goes back, I think, to Pashtun culture. Treat an elder with respect. So we were fed well. We were in a dark 12 feet by 12 foot cell. We were only allowed out about 3 minutes every night to go to the toilet. Otherwise, it was complete darkness the entire time. But we were also treated with respect, so it was both.
It's an interesting mix. Now, we're going to take a short break here, but I want to point out that, of course, Ambassador Zaif also was held captive by U.S. forces from Bagram and then, of course, sent to Guantanamo. We'll discuss that when we return from this break. We'll also look at U.S. efforts to defeat the Taliban and ask our guests if they think a traditional military campaign could actually work against such a foe. Don't go away. Welcome back. The Taliban could end up becoming part of the Afghan government, but it's a controversial plan that questions what kind of role the group would play and what kind of Afghanistan they're looking to build. Giving us an inside perspective are Abdul Salam Zaif, who served as the Taliban's emissary to Pakistan prior to the US invasion. He joins us from the Afghan capital, Kabul. From New York, we have Jerry Van Dyke, a journalist and author who has covered Afghanistan for decades. He was captured and held by the Taliban in 2008 and was giving us a description of his treatment. Ambassador Zaif, let me ask you about your time in detention once you were captured by the US or detained by the US forces, first in Bagram and then sent to Guantanamo Bay. How were you treated?
Yeah, in the beginning I was arrested by Pakistan's government. And you know that I was in Pakistan officially. I was working as an ambassador to Pakistan from Afghanistan. And it was 2002, the 2nd of January, the Pakistanis, they came to my house and they arrested me. For 1 day or 2 nights I was with Pakistani. Eventually in Peshawar airport they surrendered me to American. In the beginning, I wasn't know the American what they should do with me, and I was thinking that they should respect to me, and I would be surrendered to American like a human. But when the Pakistani they surrendered me to American, it was very, very, very bad time. I'm not able to remember this time. I'm not able to tolerate this time. And in the beginning, they kicked me and they beat me and they naked me in front of Pakistani soldier in Pakistan, and they put me in the helicopter from Peshawar to the warship in the Gulf, and in the way always there were 4 or 5 people. They were I was under these 4 or 5 people, and they were sitting me and they were kicking me, they were abusing me until we went to the warship. In the warship, 5 days I was with them. They were investigated me. They were asking me about Osama bin Laden, about Mullah Muhammad Umar, about the other Taliban. And 5 days I didn't see anyone. I didn't understood the day and night in that time. And after that, they transferred me from here to Bagram. And Bagram was the very bad place. When I received to Bagram, that's they put me in the snow, and it was very cold, and they make me naked there. And some soldier, I'm hearing their voice, and they were calling me, this is the big one. And they were kicking me, they were doing very, cursing me, they were abusing me, until I became unconscious in the snow. After that, I didn't know how long I was unconscious. When I became conscious, I was in some room with an investigator, naked, and in front of me, this was 2 soldiers with a big stick. In one side, and the other side was the other soldier. They were with guns, and behind of me was the investigator. They are asking me about. Yeah.
Ambassador, what about once you got
this
to
was the situation they are doing me.
Yes, sir, I understand. What about Guantanamo Bay? How were you treated while you were there?
Yeah. And after that, for 1 month, I was transferred to Kandahar. In 2.5 months, I was Kandahar. And from Kandahar, we went to the Guantanamo Bay. The Guantanamo Bay was, in the beginning, it was very hard condition there. And when we were with the soldier, they were looking us like terrorists, like enemy. And in the beginning, the soldier, they were telling me, you are not able to talk, you should not stand up. You are not looking to us. When you are sleeping, you have to be looking to the light there. And the food there was the emeries which they were using for the soldier for 3 or 5 months. And the investigation every day was continuing. More than 230 times I went to investigation with American. Always they were telling us, and if you tell something right, and if you are cooperating with us, that we should help you.
Well,
and if you are not cooperating with us, that you will be here and you will be die in this way. There were in the Guantanamo Bay, there was no human right, there were no regulation for the detainees, there were no national right, there were nothing for the detainees.
Just in the few minutes we have, let me get a couple of questions in. I want to bring Jerry Van Dyke back in here and ask, do you believe the US could actually achieve a conventional military against the Taliban, knowing the group as you do and knowing the circumstances in Afghanistan?
No, I do not. I don't believe that the United States fully understands, and I think that's made clear by statements by U.S. generals, the Pashtuns. I do feel that there is something going on between the United States and Pakistan. I'm not quite certain exactly behind the scenes what the policy ultimately is for Afghanistan and Pakistan, what the United States really wants. I think based upon my time with the Taliban, I felt that they would never give in. I did not feel that you could buy them off, as many people say here in the West, with money. I felt that the role of Islam, tied with Pashtun nationalism, was so strong within them, and the sense of history that we have stood up to invaders in the past, our grandfathers and those our ancestors before them. I think this carries deep in their blood, and I don't feel that this war can be won traditionally. I don't think it can be won by using guns. I think ultimately it's going to have to some sort of negotiation, and I think without question, again, based solely upon my experiences, is that the role of the Pakistani government must be brought in, because the men who had me and those who I was with beforehand, before I was captured, said we go to Pakistan for support. And that came back again and again. Until such time as that is made very clear, I don't think that this war can be won, but I do think that in the end, an accommodation can be made, because I do think that all at once, I did see a member of Al-Qaeda in Kunar province with the Taliban leader I was with, or about 8 men. He wouldn't talk to me. Other than that, and another time they said there was a member of Al-Qaeda. I didn't see him. I didn't have a chance to talk to them. The Taliban are, in my view, clearly in the role. Al-Qaeda was second.
All right, well, let me bring in Ambassador Zaif here. Just a brief answer, sir, because we don't have much time. I want to ask you regarding an email we had from Hassam Salim Mir, who sent a question to us. He wrote, The Taliban are not accustomed to the so-called democracy thrust upon them. They want to restore and preserve their Islamic way of life. Will foreigners in the region assisting the Taliban want this? Now, I guess, Ambassador, the question is, has the Taliban and the warlords taken payments from the US, as has been said in the US and Western media? Have payments been made to facilitate US movement throughout the country, for example? And do you think that the US can do a deal with the Taliban that would accommodate them into the government in some way?
Yeah, I think that, the Muslim people of Afghanistan, they are Muslim. Not the 99%, the 100% of the Afghanistan people, they are Muslim. I think this is very easy for them to be convinced by law, which all the people, they are expected to that. I think the Taliban, they know Islam. The people of Afghanistan, they know Islam. And that was the reason when the Taliban, they arise from Kandahar, and they were supported by the nation, and they were successful, and they controlled the 95% of Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. The second question about the U.S. deal with the Taliban, it is possible, yeah. But this is necessary and requirement for the United Nations. They want to deal with the Taliban or not. The Taliban, they are struggling for freedom and for independence of Afghanistan. If the Americans, they should respect to these two conditions, it's possible to deal with the Taliban. The Taliban, they don't want to do anything against anyone in the world. The agenda is Afghani, and this is national agenda. And they want Afghanistan to be stable, and they want Afghanistan to be independent.
Right.
If the American respect to that, to come to this point, I think this is possible.
I'm sorry to
this is very easy.
I'm sorry to interrupt you because we're just
resolve the problem.
Ambassador, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We're short of time. Jerry, I also want to thank you for joining us with your answers as well. And thank you for being with us. Now, remember, you can follow our program on Twitter. We'll keep you notified on upcoming shows, and you can send us questions and comments to pose to our guests. On the next show, can food aid hurt more than it nourishes? We'll be talking to Doctors Without Borders about the new campaign to bring the crisis of childhood malnutrition back into the spotlight, and their international appeal for quality aid over quantity. Make sure you do tune in for that. From me and the team, we'll see you next time.